Welcome back, everyone. We're going to go over the final sections today of Chapter 5 in the presidency. Now that you understand what the president can do, how they become president, and what they can't do with the checks from Congress and the Supreme Court, now we're going to look at what the modern day presidency looks like. Okay, so the modern day presidency, they are, yes, one person, but they don't act alone. They have 2.7 million people working for them with the federal bureaucracy. So their decision making and execution of policy is really not just them. It's done by other bureaucrats. It could be good, it could be bad, but their decision making isn't just with them. Now, one person that they can use in their arsenal is the vice president. The vice president used to be whoever got second place. So, like, for instance, in the second election in the history of the United States, John Adams got first place, Thomas Jefferson got second. So therefore, Thomas Jefferson became vice president. And they realized that was not a good idea when the two of them absolutely hated each other, to the point where working together was super difficult. So they made the 12th Amendment, which said from now on, the president and the vice president get elected separately, and they are their own ballot, basically. Now, you do see tickets together, like when you see, if you see a ballot, it's going to say one choice for Biden and Harris and one choice for Trump and Pence, but they are specific to the vice presidency with Pence and Harris. So I want you guys to think about that. Imagine if the 12th Amendment didn't exist. Right now, our vice president would be Hillary Clinton. So you can imagine her and Trump working together would just be absolute disaster. So what else do they do in the Constitution? They have two jobs. They are president of the Senate and the president in waiting. So as president of the Senate, since there's 100 members, they're there to break ties. Every now and then they can preside over the meetings and, call roll and that kind of stuff, but they don't really show up to there that much, basically just to break ties. And then, like I said, they're next in line in case the president dies or resigns. We've had, out of our 45 presidents, 9 of them have either died or resigned in office where the vice president did take over. Sometimes they do act as president. They can represent the United States overseas, or sometimes, like for instance, with George W. Bush, at one point, he had to get a routine, I think it was a colonoscopy, and he was under, anesthesia for several hours. So like Dick Cheney act as the president in that time, just in case anything were to happen. But it's really seen as very unimportant. It just depends how much the president wants to actually use them. Sometimes they don't use them at all. Sometimes they use them a lot, but that's just kind of their choice. Now, this first spouse, this is the first. Right now, we've only had first ladies. If we ever have a woman president, we're not sure. Maybe the first gentleman, they'll call them, first husband. There's no formal role. It's not written anywhere in the Constitution, but it just kind of gives the way that it's kind of informally evolved over time is that the first lady helps represent the country, helps throw the parties, connects the people to the government, to the president. And usually in modern days, we've seen the first lady pick some type of policy that they champion, and that's what they push. So like both the Bushes, Barbara and Laura pushed literacy. Hillary Clinton pushed healthcare. Michelle Obama pushed healthy eating. And then First Lady Trump right now is pushing like anti-bullying and stuff like that. The EOP are the people that actually work inside the White House, the executive office of the president. They basically have gained a lot of power since World War II. They're the ones that work for the president that help initiate legislation over in Congress. But now they're getting more powers from Congress because there's like the National Security Council that works there. You've got the Office of Management and Budget that deals with budgeting at the White House. They definitely, we've got the press secretary. So they're the ones that are part of the attention that's given to the national, just to us, when we get news from them. And basically these are like not only the president's top advisors, but like they're the ones that he can hire that are like the most loyal to him and will help push his agenda. especially the press secretary. So here's an example. If you look at the Office of Management and Budget, you could see the president, or I'm sorry, the Executive Office of the President. I apologize. These are the people that work at the White House, and you can see there's a lot of the Council of Economic Advisors, the National Security Council, like I mentioned before, the OMB. There's some people that work across the street at the Eisenhower Building, like that's where like the Office of the Vice President is, but that doesn't mean they can't come back and forth at the White House and work there. Okay, so the president is known as also another role he holds, like he holds chief legislature, chief commander in chief, that kind of stuff. He's also considered the chief of the party, like the unofficial leader of their political party. And their number one job as to be leader of the party and to get stuff done is what's known as, many political scientists call it, the power to persuade. That's their number one job, to persuade the country, to persuade Congress to go and follow their agenda. So they'll definitely try to, as the chief of the party, to push the party's agenda. They'll try to persuade the public. They'll try to persuade not only members of Congress in their party, but members of Congress who are on the opposite side too. So they have to basically be persuasive to a lot of different, as they say, constituencies, different groups. Another way they do that is they have to persuade the public to be on board with what their agenda is that they're setting forth. So they can do that in a lot of different ways, and it's expanded over time. Again, the modern presidency, I told you this before, really started with Teddy Roosevelt, and we're seeing this continually happen over time. So one way they can do this is going public, where it's a strategy where the president promotes himself and advances his policy in Washington by appealing directly to the voters. We see this one of the times. This is definitely a way to mobilize the branches. Teddy Roosevelt was the first to do this by using what was known as the bully pulpit. That's what going public is. You appeal directly to the voters and tell them, a preacher stands at a pulpit to preach to the people, and they call it the bully pulpit because he basically preached to the people to kind of bully Congress into doing what he wanted. So like, it's the idea that, people, Americans, we want health care, and, it's sitting at the desk of Congress, and I've been trying to convince them to do it, but they're not doing anything. That's a bully pulpit, because then it puts all the pressure on Congress to get it done, and the people will get mad at Congress and not necessarily the president. And, other presidents used it in different ways. You see, like FDR used fireside chats. He would directly address the people through that. So you see different televised events that the president might use. President Trump did it with Twitter. Okay, so you can see that those are all very famous examples of going public. So how do the Americans evaluate the presidential's performance? We see this in modern day polling, where we see tons of different polling agencies. You have Rasmussen, you have Real Clear Politics, you have Gallup, USA Today, Quinnipiac, all these different types, and more that take the poll to see how people feel about the president. And obviously, if a president has a higher rating, they're going to be very more likely to persuade the public to do as they want. When do they have the strongest rating? They always have it at the very beginning of their presidency. They call it the honeymoon period. That's when everyone's excited, a new president, new things, and then it kind of dies down over time. Another time we see a president's numbers go up, the economy's great, and some type of national crisis happens, whether usually a military conflict. Like the highest rating ever in the history of polling data for a president was 91% with George W. Bush after 9/11 happened. So that was when it was hands down the strongest. If you look at these are the average approval ratings of presidents. As you can see, my man JFK had the highest because he's just the absolute best. And then the worst approval rating was Carter, Truman, and then Barack Obama. This is an interesting graph, and I've seen this one as an FRQ. This is showing you their approval rating over time. And if you notice for each one of them, you can tell their highest ratings tended to be the honeymoon period. It's all, and then it goes down from hill when they start, and then it goes down. Now, George H.W., why did this happen? because he won the Persian Gulf War, which happened later in his presidency. And then, oh, I promised no taxes. And just kidding, here are taxes. Again, here's why did this happen? Like I told you before, this was 9/11. So you can see. And then Obama's, it's the honeymoon period. Oh, he's so great. I'm so excited. He's not really doing what I want. So that happens with all of the presidents. It's very common to see this. And if you want to look at this in more detail, it's in your book. How do we see them getting involved in public policy? Just an example of this in the modern day was the DREAM Act. This was one of Obama's executive orders that was seen as pretty controversial, where he created the idea of DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Child Arrivals, which is basically saying undocumented immigrants who came to the country before the age of 16 get to, they can't get deported. And so, because they didn't have a choice, that's the idea behind it. It's super partisan. People got really upset because Obama, for a long time, was like, I can't touch immigration. I can't do it. That's what Congress does. I just approve what they do. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just said, fine, Congress isn't doing anything with immigration. I'm just going to do it myself. So it was an executive order, super, super controversial, super partisan, very much something that people did not like. Trump administration rescinded the order, but it's still in effect because the courts kind of blocked him from rescinding it. So here's an example of someone with a DACA card. Moving on. All right. Should presidents use public approval ratings in making difficult policy decisions? That's just your opinion. Do you think that, and if you were if you were a president's like advisor for running for like an election or something, would you tell them vote on what you think is best or vote on what the people think is best? Should you be proactive or reactive? Do presidents have an obligation to make difficult decisions even when the public does not support those decisions? Again, looking back in history, think of times when presidents had to make tough decisions. Like, for instance, when Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, or Lincoln just sent troops to war to fight the South. Like, a lot of people didn't want that. But do you think he had the obligation to do that? Those are just questions to think about, especially when we're doing FRQs in the future, long ones and short ones. Other than that, I'm done. We're done with chapter 5. Our next chapter is going to be Supreme Court. Have a great day.